So you've made a toile or a mock-up, like you were told to, and you know it's just for testing, but I know you're asking yourself, just how accurate does this toile or mock-up need to be to actually get the information you need from it? Well, in this video, let's talk all about that. Just how precise and accurate your toile or mock-up does actually need to be to get the best results out of all your efforts in making one. My sewing friends, welcome. If you are actually just brand new here, welcome. My name is Evelyn Wood and I'm the creator of VintageSewingSchool.com, and my job is basically to help people just like you learn to sew the best clothes that you've ever sewn, ones you actually want to wear. So do hit the subscribe button down below if you haven't already. One question that I get asked a lot, whether it's at Vintage Sewing School, comments here on YouTube, I see it all the time, is, well, how accurate does your toile or mock-up actually need to be? Because I know it can seem like you're making two garments when you first start and you think, oh my goodness, is this worth it? Now, I have made other videos on making toiles and what they're all about, so I will put those up there for future reference. So what I'm going to do is talk about the points of how accurate you need to be during the different processes, like cutting, like sewing, and assessing. So we'll break it down into categories, but first of all, let's clear a few points on a toile or mock-up. A toile, pronounced T-W-A-L-L, is the French name. I'm definitely butchering the pronunciation. I apologize to any French speakers. But that is the name that I've learnt to use is, and a mock-up is the same thing. A mock-up is a very accurate description of what it is. It is a mock-up, it's a sample, it's a test garment of your real thing. And very quickly, there are, in my opinion, at least two main reasons why you make a toile or mock-up. And this falls into why or not you need to be so precise. So the reasons you would make it up is that it is a test, a sample, a fit, so you can test the fit and the design as you get more advanced in your pattern making skills and your developing patterns. And obviously what they do in industry is to test the actual design, as well as mostly for us at home is the fit. So that's what we're testing. And then secondary use of a toile is that, well, when you're learning, it is a fantastic practice to actually learn the pattern pieces, putting them together, practice your zip, practice using fusing, practice your understitching, all these things. It's really good practice because I promise you, when you do it for the second time, say on your real one with your fashion fabric, it's not a scale that when you do it twice, it's double, like twice as good. It's not even a scale like that, it's exponential. When you do it the second time, it is 10 times better than your first one. And so as you're learning, you won't be making pattern, because you don't know how to make adjustments for fit yet. So it's not about that. Your toile or mock-up is really about practicing and learning the process of making up that garment so your next one is really good and something that you'll actually want to wear. And it is important to understand why you're making a toile as to then how precise you might need to be in all the different phases that we go through. So first, let's look at your fabric choice, because this is a really, really big one. So fabric choice. Now, if you've been here any amount of time, you know that I actually promote the use of secondhand bed sheets all of the time. And I use these for my toiles to try and get 100% cotton. The actual like poorer quality, the looser weave ones are sometimes better because the really high thread count is a bit tight and dense sometimes, and it's not quite like the fabric we're going to choose, which keep listening because that will make more sense in a minute. I like these because it's just recycling fabric that would otherwise probably just get thrown into landfill, and it's very, very cheap and affordable. You can literally get them for a few dollars and you don't have to feel bad about it. And sometimes you can get nice prints like these too. So traditionally it's made out of calico, which is pretty much the same thing, or muslin. It's just a plain weave neutral fabric, like cotton fabric that we use. Why? Because you want to maybe be able to draw on it so you can see things. So plain color is really what you want for your toile. But the fabric choice, so the idea here is that you're doing like for like fabric. So you want something that either drapes, that falls, that stretches the same as the fabric that you're going to choose to make your garment out of. Now, yes, so that means knit for one thing. So you can use a bedsheet wovens for most of your wovens, but if you're making your garment from a knit, you absolutely need to make your toile, your mock-up from a knit as well, because there's no way that this fits like this in an end garment. It's not. They're two completely different things and should always be treated separately. So yes, you absolutely need a knit with a similar stretch, because it will fit so differently with only a 30% stretch as it would with a 70% stretch. Super different. And the other main thing is the drape. So when we talk about wovens especially, is the drape and fall. So something like this rayon is going to fall completely different than this cotton. Say for example, if I was to make this cotton dress that I'm wearing here out of a more slinky, slippery rayon, I know these pleats will probably look pretty different. The bottom is going to be all fluty and wavy, and it's going to look really, really different than it does in this structured cotton. Now, this type of choice is more important as a beginner because you just don't know fabric yet. And so you don't know that the drape will be different. But you know, you're learning, and I think that using bed sheets the best you can, making any toile out of any fabric that you have access to, is better than doing no toile. So don't stress about it too much, but note that it's more about understanding when, if you make it out of a bedsheet fabric and you've got something drapey, have a look and feel and notice the difference when you make them of what the different fabric means to an end garment. And you obviously get better and better at that as you learn and you get more experience. But fabric choice is important, but don't stress. Any toile or mock-up is better than nothing at all, I promise. And which we go to cutting. How accurate do you need to be in cutting out your pattern pieces for your toile or mock-up? Oh my goodness. Well, basically you should be almost as accurate as you would with the real thing, because if you just hack through it really quickly and the fabric slips and you've got chunks out everywhere, it makes it really hard to sew neatly, and you're probably sewing at different seam allowances, and then the whole sizing is off slightly and all wonky, and you know, it just snowballs on from here. So do it almost as accurately as you would the real thing. You can speed through a little bit faster, but trust me, just take your time. Accuracy is key, and at cutting, it all snowballs from here. So the more accurate you are cutting makes everything else easier. And which leads us to the sewing. I know this is a big one. How accurate does your sewing need to be for your toile or mock-up? Well, it depends on the reason why you're making your toile or mock-up. If you're making a full garment as a toile, or a wearable mock-up as often called, you will need to be very accurate in all of your sewing. There's a few different reasons. Generally, your toile or mock-up is a shell. It's the basic outer shell of a garment that's not finished, so you don't have hems, you don't have seam finishes, you don't have facings or zips, sometimes even sewn in, to get a look of the actual shell of the garment to make those major adjustments that you need to the pattern. And we'll talk about having to repeat toiles and mock-ups in a minute, but you can make those major changes at this stage. If you're making it as a whole garment, you will obviously do the whole thing as you need to. But accurate sewing is really important. If you don't sew all of your side seams very accurately, if you've got panel seams like on this dress here, we've got side seams here, panel seams at the front, princess seams. If you are just like half a centimeter off here, that's half, this is 1 centimeter, then it's 1.5 centimeters, that's 2 centimeters. Down the back, that's 2.5, that's 3 centimeters. Oh my goodness, 3 centimeters difference in the whole garment already, which is more than half an entire size. So you can see for sizing, it's very accurate. The other part of sewing is, in fact, the stay stitching and the edges of your garment. I promise, taking the time to make your stay stitching is absolutely necessary, because if you don't, these areas like our necklines stretch out so easily because they are cut on the bias of the fabric. They stretch and pull and you won't even notice. I promise, if you're just beginning, I never used to notice either. You're doing it without knowing because you just haven't, your eyes aren't trained there yet to really be able to see that stretching and that pulling. So it is really key. Make sure you stitch your seam allowances, and accurate seams are a must. The other is the pressing. I think it is absolutely a must, because if you have this like crumpled up mess, it's really hard to see what's going on and get an accurate fit. If your seams aren't pressed, if it's all wrinkly and gross, it's really hard to get a proper look. And if you're actually starting to design different looks yourself, you need it for the actual fit of the garment. You can see through here how different each of these sides look. This side here has had all of the seam allowances just pressed under, so I've stay stitched it, clipped where needed so it can turn under, and so then it actually gives me an accurate reading of where the neckline sits, where the sleeves finish, where it finishes on the waistline. It is super important. Think about your straps. You can see the difference how these look visually with the seam allowances still out there. It's really hard to see the proper end garment. And so that is why on traditional toile, you will also fold over your seam allowances as needed as well. So bottom line is with sewing, it is really important for the fit to be accurate and the design. If you're choosing the design yourself, you need to maybe have a think about those edges, but make sure you stay stitched so you don't cause yourself any problems further on. It is important, and how accurate you want to be will depend on how accurate you want your end garment to be, because the more accurate this is, the more accurate your changes will be to your next version. Which leads us to the next one. And I've made a whole separate extra point on this, and that is how accurate is the testing the changes that you need to make. So I know this is a little bit unusual and you don't usually hear this talked about, but say we're going to make some major changes to your toile. You're taking it in different sizes, you're reshaping the neckline, and you think, I don't want to make another one. You just go straight to the real thing, and we all know how that ends out sometimes. It's total disaster. I am a big fan, and I see this in my students at Vintage Sewing School. The more successful students are the ones that really take their time and they do multiple toiles and mock-ups to really work and hone in on the fit and the design, because once you do all this work on this pattern, it's then your own personal block, and it's worth it because then you have this perfectly fitted pattern that you can then keep evolving and changing from there. So making changes. My rule of thumb is any major changes that you're making, so if you're full bust adjustment, hiring and lowering, and all of these types of things, if you need to make it to your pattern, you couldn't possibly make those changes on your ready-made garment. Like if it was a shell, say as an alteration type thing, think in your mind. If you couldn't do it like an alteration to a ready-made garment, then you need to maybe do another toile to make sure it fits, because once you change one thing, it affects the fit of another area and another area and another area. We've all learned that the hard way. So when you get to the tiny tweaks, i.e. that means if you had a garment not finished with facings or anything, just the shell still of your fashion fabric, your finished fabric, if you could still make little alterations, those tweaks, tiny tweaks that you need, then you can move on to your actual garment. And I say, because then you will be able to just tweak any things to your garment from there. But the major changes, you need another toile or mock-up. I promise it'll be worth it every time. It'll save you that beautiful fabric that you've been saving cutting into. No one wants to make a disaster out of that. And I do understand that as you're learning, you don't know how to make all these pattern changes for fit and everything yet. And well, if that is really what you're looking for and you like this content, that is exactly what I do at Vintage Sewing School. And I would love to have you in class and help you learn that process so you can really make the clothes that really fit perfect and something that you want to wear. I've left links down below to vintagesewing.com. Come and join me. But if you're still just learning, as I said, it's about the practice as well. So don't disregard a toile or mock-up. Even if you don't know how to make any changes to your pattern yet, it's about the practice as well, because as I said, those results that you get from doing it twice, it's not a 1-to-1 ratio. It'll be 10 times better. I've seen it in my own sewing. Even still now, the second time I do something, even now is still infinitely better than the first time that I do it, and I practice everything. Doing it as a whole garment, that wearable mock-up, as the term is called, is a thing, and this is why. Okay, my sewing friends, I would love to hear down below how accurate or not accurate, how have you learnt the hard way of how accurate your toile or your mock-up has to be. I would really love to hear those, and remember to read all the comments down below because it is super helpful to hear other people's experiences in our sewing community here. I think you'll learn a lot. Okay, my sewing friends, until next time, happy sewing. Bye.